Film. Photographic film is experiencing a resurgence, and this is 2024. And there are all the signs that this trend will continue. Now, how can I say that? Am I able to read the future? Of course not. But as I said, there are many, many signs. This is not something that has been happening in just the last couple of years. It's been working its way toward the success of these days in the past 10, 12 years, thereabout. Interesting enough, the torchbearers, the people who are really holding most of this trend are the digital natives, the 30-something and 20-something. For them, film isn't an inherited artifact like it was for my generation. For them, it's a chosen medium, rediscovered and revered. This speaks volumes about the timeless appeal of film in an era dominated by the digital convenience. They like it, not because they are told by old people like me that they should care for it. No. Film has an absolute beauty that is recognized by people born in the digital era, and the fact that younger people are discovering by themselves proves to me that film is to stay. So when I talk about this with my clients, I am a portrait photographer here in Charleston, South Carolina. My name is Paolo. So when I talk to them about film, they express surprise. Yes, I am old enough that I was born in the era of film, so it might seem that I'm a little nostalgic about it, but actually I'm not, because I'm a technologist. For 30 years, I worked as a software engineer for companies like Borland, and the digital realm is where I was most comfortable. When digital photography came about, I was really happy, because that meant to me to be able to marry computers with the visual arts, two things that I love very much. But over time, I actually rediscovered film myself and realized that, yes, digital is convenient, but there is something that is completely different about film that digital lacks. So when I talk about this with my clients, they ask me, why film? Why in 2024? Now, that question assumes that digital and film are equivalent, which is the first hint of bias. In reality, they're not. And so when we ask why film, we are already asking a biased question which will lead to biased answers. But it gets more complicated than that. What is interesting about the question is that it actually masks a much larger question, which goes something like this. With digital being every bit as good as film, or even better, because there is no grain, and with film being so expensive and requiring to either have a darkroom or wait days or even weeks to have your images, why would you use film? Well, that seems like a real, reasonable question, no? That's what people are asking, and it seems extremely logical. Well, the problem with that question is that it is almost 100% completely false. Yes, I know that this seems incredible, but that's the nature of bias. Bias is something that we assume to be true, and instead is completely false. We know of extreme examples of bias in the history of humanity, so this is hardly coming as a surprise. As I mentioned, I love technology and digital imagery. In my last work in software, I was literally manipulating digital images in C and C++. Those are two computer languages, in case you don't know. So how can I say that the above statement is false? It seems so absolutely patently true. But that is not about me saying that. It is about facts, the evidence that speaks to us if we only listen. Let's start with the first part, which is with digital being every bit as good as film. Let's take a look at the landscape of professional photography today. If we were going to ask any number of professional photographers today what kind of camera equipment they use, I would say that 98 to 99% of them will say full frame, DSLR, or mirrorless camera. The remaining portion, which goes between 1 to 2%, are using cropped sensors, aka APS-C cameras, micro four third, or super full frame. I know probably you're wondering what the heck is a super full frame camera. We'll get to that in a minute. So the vast majority of people are using basically 35 millimeter cameras. Now, full frame is the full realization of the 35 millimeter film frame, which measures 36 millimeters by 24 millimeters. Between 1 to 2% of photographers are using APS-C and micro four third cameras, which are smaller than 35/full frame cameras. The crop sensor is always in relation to the 35 millimeter frame, and it measures about 22 by 14 millimeters. There are fractions there, but it's irrelevant. Basically, the cropped sensor cameras have a sensor that is about 60% of the 35 millimeter frame. So the vast majority of digital photography in 2024 is small format photography. Remember, there are three segments in photography: small format, medium format, and large format. And digital basically only covers small format. All perspective in modern photography is basically based on the 35 millimeter standard. Regardless of digital or film, there is a perspective that is imposed on the image created because of the format of the camera, because of the area of the image making device, being that film or a digital sensor. That is perfectly fine for many types of photography, but also very limiting for others. If we photograph sports, weddings, school portraits, and even some types of nature situations, digital is definitely a good choice. When we enter the realm of portraiture or fine art photography, well, that's a completely different story. And small format is quite limiting. Then there are the digital cameras, of course, made by Fuji and Hasselblad. We know about them. Their sensor is barely bigger than full frame, measuring about 33 millimeters by 44 millimeters. That is 11 millimeters in the width and 8 millimeters more than full format in the height. It's unfortunate that Fuji and Hasselblad made the decision of calling those medium format. That's a lie. It's a straight up lie. Medium format was invented in 1901 with the introduction of 120 film, which is 6 centimeters tall. Medium format cameras have a frame of variable width going from 4.5 centimeters up to 17 millimeters. 33 by 44 from Hasselblad and Fuji is about 3 by 4, which is exactly the same ratio of 6 by 8 medium format, which means that the sensors in those cameras is about a quarter the size of medium format. And when you are a quarter of the reference, you're not the reference by a very, very long shot. So you're not allowed to call those 1/4 size medium format. That's mud in the waters and a rather deceitful marketing technique. It's about taking the mystique of medium format built upon more than 1 century of great photography and trying to claim it for a camera that is barely bigger than full frame. This is not about resolution, it's about optics. There is a very recognizable look created by medium format. Look at the work of Richard Avedon, Helmut Newton, Platon, and countless others. You will not be able to reproduce that look with a 35mm camera, whether that is film or digital, and not with those wonderful cameras by Fuji or Hasselblad. They're digital machines of today, and they're fantastic, but they're not medium format. When you have a frame that is 6 by 6, 6 by 7, or 6 by 9, you need to have lenses that cover that surface. That means you can use, for example, a 120mm lens 2 meters away from the subject and frame most of that person. With a 35mm camera, you would see a portion of their head and you would need to move further away. The ability to use long lenses with a short distance is one of the key benefits of medium formats, which becomes even more visible in large format, where we can use even longer lenses at the same distance. So while the camera made by Fuji and Hasselblad today are excellent cameras, I would love to work with those cameras. They're not even remotely medium format. And calling them in that way is misleading and creating confusion in our industry. That's why I propose to call them super full frame. It's much closer to the reference. I welcome your thoughts on this terminology, and please feel free to suggest alternatives. But what about phase one? That is, in fact, a 6 by 4.5 centimeters sensor. Yes, that is indeed a medium format camera. But when your camera costs $25,000, $32,000 without the lens, or $60,000, you don't actually have a product in the market. You have a proof of concept. I don't know a single photographer who owns a phase one, and comparing that price versus the price of a film medium format completely demolishes the myth that digital is cheaper. A few months ago, I bought this wonderful Mamiya RB67, which is fully mechanical, and so probably will outlast me. And I bought it for $450, including the lens. And that lens is magnificent. When you put together a system that costs $25,000 without the lens, and compare that to the cost of this Mamiya, I can probably buy 3,000 rolls of film for the price difference. No, medium format practically does not exist in the digital world. Compare that with how many hobbyists and dedicated amateurs owned medium format cameras, like the Rolleiflexes, the Zeiss Nettar or Iconta, the Yashica Mat, the Mamiya C220, C330, or many others. Those cameras are still in use today, 40 to 70 years later, and take amazing photos. Those cameras were available to many people in the past with just a standard income. That cannot be said today. Digital cameras cost a lot more today, ranging from $2,000 up to $7,000 or $9,000 for the body without the lens. And then you have to also factor in the accessories. Digital cameras need very expensive batteries. It's easy to spend between 5 to 10 times what would you need for a 35mm film camera. With a difference in price between digital and film, you can literally buy hundreds and hundreds of rolls of film. So, looking at the first part of the why film question, we see that in all practicality, digital photography covers only the small format, or 35mm, while medium format and large format are without real digital alternatives. So digital, as formats go, is only 1/3 of film, a far cry from being every bit as good as film. And then there are matters of quality of the image that we will talk about later. The entry ticket into professional photography is much, much cheaper with film than with digital, which busts the second myth in the original why film question, with film being so expensive. Yes, film is more expensive today, not in small part because of the effect of shutting down the world during COVID. Materials are more expensive. There are signs that things are getting better and prices are going down a certain bit, a little bit. We can also be smart and buy film in quantity instead of a single roll. If you know that you like Ilford Delta 400 or Kodak T-Max 100, for example, buy 5 or 10 rolls. It will cost you much, much less. But it's clear that if you want to use a professional camera with interchangeable lenses today, you can buy a Canon, Nikon, Minolta, just to mention a few, for as little as $250 today, including generally a 50mm lens, a far cry from the $3,000 of digital without lens. And if you want to go straight to medium format with negatives measuring anywhere from 6x6 to 6x9, you can get incredible cameras and lenses for just a couple of $100 more. The advantage is that you will have a whole world of different perspectives in medium format that you cannot experience in 35mm film or digital. In reality, what people pay for a single roll of film is often equivalent to what they pay for their daily Starbucks. So the lesson is simple. Buy less coffee and more film. It will also make your hands more steady, which is good for making sharper photos. Well, this is it for now. We're going to see how film delivers actually more advanced quality than digital, and how you can get your film photos in front of your eyes in a matter of minutes in the next video. I'm Paolo Ciccone with Paolo Portraits here in Charleston, South Carolina. Thank you very much for watching.